Time zones can seem weird for several reasons. 1. Historical factors. Colonial influence. Many countries' time zones are a result of their colonial past. For example, India has a single time zone, Indian Standard Time, UTC plus 5:30. This was established during the British colonial rule to standardize time across the vast subcontinent for administrative and railway purposes. Even after gaining independence, the country retained this time zone. The choice of UTC plus 5:30 was somewhat arbitrary in the sense that it was based on the longitude of Allahabad, which was considered a central location in British India. Political decisions. The establishment of time zones was often a political decision rather than a purely scientific one. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, as countries were trying to standardize time for transportation and communication, governments would often choose a time zone that aligned with their own interests. For example, China adopted a single time zone, China Standard Time, UTC plus 8, in 1949. This was done to promote national unity and standardization, even though geographically China spans several longitudes that would suggest multiple time zones. 2. Geographical irregularities. Irregular boundaries. Time zones don't always follow neat longitudinal lines. For example, the International Dateline, which is generally along the 180-degree meridian, has several deviations. It zigzags around some island groups to keep them in the same day. For instance, the Line Islands in the Pacific Ocean are split by the International Dateline, but the islands are grouped together in the same time zone to avoid confusion. The dateline deviates around the Aleutian Islands in Alaska to keep them in the same day as the rest of the state. Discontinuous time zones. Some countries have time zones that are not contiguous. For example, France has several time zones due to its overseas territories. Metropolitan France is in the Central European Time Zone, UTC plus 1, but French Guiana in South America is in the UTC 3 time zone. This can lead to confusion when trying to coordinate times across different parts of the French Republic. 3. Daylight Saving Time, DST. Variable adoption. The use of DST varies greatly around the world. Some countries adopt it to make better use of daylight during the summer months, while others don't. For example, most European countries switch to DST in the spring and fall back in the autumn. However, countries like Iceland don't use DST at all. This can create a situation where, during certain parts of the year, the time difference between two countries that are normally in the same time zone changes. For example, during DST, the United Kingdom UTC plus 1 is 1 hour ahead of countries like Portugal UTC plus 0 that don't observe DST at the same time. Different start and end dates. Even among countries that use DST, the start and end dates can differ. In the United States, DST typically starts on the second Sunday in March and ends on the first Sunday in November. In the European Union, it starts on the last Sunday in March and ends on the last Sunday in October. This can lead to a period of a few weeks each year when the time difference between the US and Europe is different from the rest of the year. 4. Cultural and social factors. Work and social schedules. The way people organize their daily lives can affect the perception of time zones. For example, in some cultures, work and social activities are more flexible and not strictly tied to the clock. In countries like Spain, where the traditional siesta is still a part of the culture, the concept of time zones and their strict adherence might not be as important as in countries with a more rigid work schedule. This can make it seem like time zones are not as relevant or are weird in the context of daily life. Local variations. Within a country, different regions might have their own local variations in timekeeping. For example, in some remote areas, people might still use traditional time-keeping methods that don't strictly follow the official time zone. This can create a situation where the official time zone doesn't seem to match the local perception of time.